splayed out behind him, tail swishing the floor like a starter's flag. In a split second he's up and running, pushing between my legs without so much as a cursory glance at me. And instead of heading for the cat flap that leads into the garden, he runs upstairs towards the kitchen, still barking, with a victorious glint in his eyes. George might be bursting for a pee, but what he wants even more urgently is his breakfast. Furious with myself for having been taken in by the same stunt as George pulled yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that, I head back to bed. But a minute later, a wet black nose appears beside my pillow, along with a pair of feathery white paws and a cloud of warm doggy breath. "Go away," I murmur, only rather less politely. Not one to give up easily, George keeps up a persistent one-sided conversation at my bedside. There's only one way to get rid of him at this time in the morning, and that's to give in. Upstairs in the open-plan kitchen-cum-living room, he throws himself down as close to the refrigerator as he can get without blocking its door, and stares at me with an unflinching gaze. I dole a generous portion of all-in-one dry dog food into his bowl and put it down on the slate hearthstone, but instead of jumping up to eat it, George doesn't budge an inch. He knows what's in there, a rubble of round brown biscuits, and they tempt him far less than the identical-looking rabbit droppings that litter Hampstead Heath. Loaded with meaning, his eyes roll towards the fridge door, then back to me. What George wants is sitting inside that humming metal box. And, just to make sure that I've got the message, he repeats the eye-rolling a couple of times and licks his lips. For an animal whose brain is the size and consistency of a mushroom, George has pretty effective communication skills. Relenting, after all I wouldn't want to eat those rabbit droppings either, I open the fridge door and take out the carcass of last night's roast chicken. George dances a salsa of anticipation around my feet as I tear off a few morsels and add them to his bowl, and when I carry it to the hearthstone he skids backwards in front of me, unwilling to take his eyes off it for an instant. Even before it's hit the floor, he's dived into it. By the time I've turned around, he's picked out every sliver of chicken and is already barking for more. "Sorry, kiddo," I say firmly. "That's your lot." George is definitely on the chunky side. He's been on a weight-loss diet ever since he recovered from anorexia, and I'm supposed to see that he sticks to it. He returns to the fridge and barks intermittently at its closed door. Doing my best to ignore him, I make a stab at clearing up the trail of detritus left lying around late last night by my 17-year-old son. The discarded sweater scrunched up between the sofa cushions, the mobile phone on the draining board, the poker chips on the mantelpiece, the open carton of milk souring on the coffee table, the 3 trainers. Why always 3? Strewn treacherously across the rug, just where I'm most likely to trip over them. Eventually George stops barking, leaps onto an armchair, and glares at me sulkily. Slowly but surely, his head droops. He's accepted that he's going to get nothing else to eat in the immediate future and settles down to his favourite leisure activity: deep, comatose sleep. At 8:15, having roused my son from his comatose sleep and packed him off to school, I wake George. Since he knows what's next on the day's agenda, he raises his head with great reluctance and looks at me with dread. Intent on getting my own back for being woken so early myself, I cry, "Walkies!" in my most enthusiastic tone, hook on his leash, drag him off the armchair, and pull him out of the front door. With a wistful backwards glance at the house, George trots down the road beside me, wagging his tail at every parked vehicle in the hope that we're going to get into it. Walk is in the car, that is, sitting upright in the front passenger seat and staring out at the passing scenery, is George's favourite form of exercise, which is why he has a weight problem.